And the bases dropped on a Friday morning. It's June 26th. It's a freestyle Friday, and we can go in a whole bunch of different directions today. We're going to talk about Liverpool winning their first Premier League title. We're going to talk about the NWSL Challenge Cup kicking off tomorrow afternoon, North Carolina and Portland. We'll get you ready for that tournament. They've got a new sponsor as of this morning as well. The NWSL's doing the best they can to take advantage of the situation. They're going to be the first American team sport back. No matter how many other outlets kind of forget that, they're going to be the first ones back, and we'll talk about that and get you ready for the Challenge Cup this weekend. Also, you got some rumors. Things are picking up on the rumor front in Major League Soccer, and they are picking up on the rumor front in South America, and they were picking up on the rumor front with a club that we know fairly well that likes to shop in South America. Let's dig into it. John, where do you want to start with this?
Well, last night, I guess it was, about 10 o'clock, and things just started blowing up on Twitter about a particular gentleman who plays for Olimpia Asuncion out of Paraguay and forced a lot of folks to go screaming into YouTube or wherever their favorite highlight compilations are found, myself included. Eric Lopez has been linked to Atlanta United.
Yes, he is an 18-year-old from Olimpia, which is your back-to-back Apertura and Clausura champions in 2019 in Paraguay. This is a kid who came in last year and joined the first team in July and scored 3 goals in his first 3 games. Turned a lot of heads. He ended up with 4 goals and 2 assists in 15 matches. At 17-18, went into the U23 squad in Olympic qualifying in January. They did not qualify, and he played a little bit. He started 1 match, came off the bench in a couple of other matches. But Olympia's in a little bit of an interesting spot at the moment. If you will remember back at the beginning of the Apertura, the way that Paraguay runs, it's a calendar year. Apertura is the spring program, Clausura is the fall. At the beginning of the Apertura, Olimpia signed a player you probably have heard of, Emmanuel Adebayor. They also have a player that you've probably heard of in Roque Santa Cruz. Both play up top. So does Eric Lopez. So, Lopez was going to be away with the U23s. He was. He's only played 1 time in the Apertura. When it did start, he was away for the first, I think, half of what was played. Came off the bench once, but there's only so many spots. Now, Adebayor's in an interesting situation at the moment because he's in Europe, and it's unknown how much a flight's going to be to get him back. I've seen 6 figures, and also if they're going to be able to get him back from Europe into the country right now. It feels like it keeps getting delayed from what I'm reading in the Paraguayan media. So there's issues there. There's also issues on the Olimpia side because earlier this week, Palmeiras of Brazil took a case to FIFA claiming that they are owed $450,000 in a transfer. It goes back to 2017, a player who was bought from Palmeiras by Olimpia and then later moved to Juarez in Mexico. There's 2 separate payments that have not been made. The last installment of the transfer fee plus the sell-on fee from the move to Juarez. That went to FIFA last week, either early this week or late last week, according to Paraguayan media. So, you've got a lot of forwards and only 2 or 1 spot, depending on how you want to play it. You've got money that is owed. I don't know what Olympia's financial situation is on the whole, but this is money that's owed that hasn't been paid. And you've got a promising young player. Now, Transfermarkt has him valued at just over $1 million. The valuations are all over the map right now because his has went down since the beginning of the pandemic, as everybody's have. So it's all a guessing game. The reports out of Paraguay have this at $3.5 million for 80% of the pass. That would mean that Olimpia would retain 20% in the future sale. For an 18-year-old player, honestly, I'm surprised they didn't want to try to keep more than that. But as we've talked about throughout all of this, you're looking at a situation with a global pandemic that is wrecking the game in a lot of countries. It's wrecking a lot of clubs who, I'm just connecting dots. If they owe money to a club already before this doesn't help you right now. And they're not looking at coming back. I believe Paraguay has just started individual training a couple of weeks ago. Lopez was one of the first players to start individual training back at June 10th. So, they're nowhere near being ready to play games yet. I think they're looking at the end of July, beginning of August. They've got to have some cash. And to sell a player who has broken through, he's got 16 matches under his belt, so he's still raw. I think that's something that does have to be understood here. He is still raw. He is not coming in as an established first-team player. He's not coming in with the same level of cachet that Ezequiel Barco came in with. He was an established first-team player, and Lopez is not that yet. Lopez is a very promising player. You watch the highlights, and the highlights are all set up to make a player look good. We know that. But what jumped out to me, he's got good speed. I don't know comparing him to players yet. It's a little hard to tell, but he's got good speed. He's good with both feet. I like his awareness on the field. What stood out to me more than anything was his balance. He is able to take a hit, not lose a step. He's got a strong core. He's a sturdy guy. So he's got speed, but he's also not small. So that's a good combination in a league like MLS. The other thing that once I went back and read a little more on his history that makes sense, you can use both feet. He is very technical. He's got a great first touch. He grew up playing futsal. He's got that futsal kind of game to him. He uses the sole of his foot a lot. He can use any part of his foot to make a pass, to control a ball. He joined Olympia's programs when he was 6. He's 18 now. He started playing futsal up till he was about 10, according to some of the articles I've read. That's going to give him a technical base that's a little different than your average player. Futsal players are good in tight spaces, maybe a little more technical. But what I like with Lopez is he's got that combination. He's not just a technical player. He doesn't have the physical side either. He's got that physical side. He can handle a challenge. He can outrun people, and he can use both feet. That's a great base to start from. He's got some professional experience. He looks like the exact kind of player that an Atlanta United would be looking for. Now, I want to remind you of two different things that revolve around this, because I've seen all the questions, I've seen all the speculation. I love that you guys who listen to the show now are not just saying like, oh, I like this player, he's good, yeah, sign him. You're talking about cap. You're talking about transfer fees. You're talking about the transfer fee being spread over the life of the contract. You're talking about, is it fit as a TAM player? I love it. I love that we're all getting to this point to where we can go beyond just sign everybody. He's good. Sign him. It's very cool that we're getting to that point. But I want to connect a couple of dots. And I don't know where this stands yet. But Paul Tenorio tweeted on June 24th, on Wednesday, before the schedule announcement hit. It was at 2 o'clock. MLS always finds new, exciting ways to surprise me with roster rules and decisions. Interesting. No follow-up. Nothing. That's just thrown out there.
Just drop that.
I'm also going to remind you of something from MLSsoccer.com. This goes back to February 6th, when the CBA was agreed upon by MLS and the MLSPA. Now, we know there was a later negotiation due to this thing that we're all dealing with called a pandemic, and things changed a little bit, but the CBA was fully done. On February 6th, there is a situation here that is titled New Under-22 Player Initiative. And it says in this was from February, beginning in 2021, MLS will have the discretion to allow clubs to sign up to 3 players who are 22 years old or younger on a reduced charge to the club's salary budget. More details regarding the new initiative will be provided at a later date. Now, I remember, and I'm trying to find all the details here from The Athletic when they were breaking things down a little bit further about this under-22 initiative. Here we go. There's some things here that maybe, because the CBA's done now and it was set to start in 21, maybe there's been a little bit of a bump up, or maybe you're able to bring him in now and he could slide under the U22 initiative for next season. This is the kind of player you're looking for with that U22 initiative. This is absolutely it. So, also remember the whole thing about designated players. Atlanta United's never had this problem. Very few clubs have this problem. Toronto, I don't think Toronto has it now. They would have last year. The LA Galaxy have it now, about the third designated player being maxed at the TAM salary of 1.6 unless they're under 23. So you sign younger guys, you're going to be, incentivized to do that. The U22 initiative, it's 3 more discretionary spots. If I remember right, the transfer fee for those spots, spend what you want. There's a cap on how much you can pay the player in salary, which I think a lot of times we get a little confused about. Young guys like an Eric Lopez coming from Paraguay, he's not making a big salary. He's on his first professional contract in Paraguay. He signed through 2023, but that's according to Paraguayan media. He's not making $1 million a year. Nowhere close. So for him to come here, you're paying a big transfer fee, but his salary jump is not going to go from, let's say he's on a good salary there of, $200,000, which I don't think he is. Your salary jump's not going to go to $1.5 million. Your salary jump's probably going to go into the $400,000 or $500,000 range. Your cap hit is going to be higher than that because of that transfer fee. But that's what this U22 initiative allows you to do. The transfer fee, push it to the side. Spend what you want on it. As long as the salary fits, and I can't remember the max. I'm going to find it before we finish today. I can't remember what the max was reported to be. Now, we have not seen what it actually is yet. This is supposed to start next year. I wonder if you're able to fit him under the cap right now, fit him under everything, and make it all work right now. But with the idea that he slides into this initiative next year, try to connect some dots. You do have a senior roster spot open, so that part's good. You don't have an international spot open, but as we always talk about, that can be worked out. You can make a trade for one, or you can loan players to USL to make the space. So you've got flexibility there, or who knows, we could have had another green card during all this that we don't know about yet. That always happens too. So this is the kind of move, I don't know if it's true or not. Everybody goes to that first. No way to know. We heard about 2 players from Cerro Porteño earlier this year that were all done. It was signed and ready to go, and it didn't happen. So you don't know. This is coming from heavyweights in Paraguay. This is coming from Bruno Pont, who is one of the deans of Paraguayan soccer media. He's reporting it. He's got pretty good security in it. So, is it going to happen? We don't know. But is it a move that fits the profile and a move that makes sense on a number of different fronts? Yeah. And look, he's going to have an opportunity, if he's the guy right now, to win time up top. Because when you look at him, he's not an Adam John or J.J. Williams kind of player. He's not that size. He's not a back-to-goal player. He's much more of a Joseph Martinez kind of player. And if he becomes that understudy to a Joseph Martinez, because One thing that jumped out to me watching his highlights is he can drift out wide. He can run at players from wide positions. That's something we've seen Joseph do before he got here, and now especially as he's more mobile and doing more things in the build-up. That's what Lopez can do. There's some similarities there, some very strong similarities there. So he would come in, get a chance to develop, but also get a chance straight away, potentially, to play this season because of the injury. And we see what happens. I think he's a guy who could play in a wide position, depending on how you want to structure the team. I think he could play potentially in one of those two attack-minded midfield roles in the 3-4-3 that we've seen Atlanta United in, behind a forward. I think he could fit into one of those spots as well. So he fits. He fits the profile. The money makes sense. I think you can make it work as a TAM player this year if you have to. He could slide into the U22 initiative whenever that's available. You got a lot of things here that check a lot of boxes. We'll just have to wait and see if the deal gets done.
Ricky Ricardo started the avalanche of wondering about information about Eric Lopez, wondering about if the new CBA had kicked in yet, which is what you were answering. Would it have made
signed? Now, it's signed, but this U22 initiative is not necessarily part of that CBA. It's something that the league can implement, and I think it was agreed upon that the league could implement it, but we don't know if it was fully implemented now. Now, the other thing I think to remember when you see designated players signed in, or TAM players at this point, signed in mid-season, it's an adjusted cap hit because they're coming in mid-season. You're not taking a full year of a cap hit. That can help you a little bit in the first 6 months. And again, if you're expecting this U22 initiative to kick in for next year, well, then you can ride out whatever you need to this year. And then he slides into that, and then he's not a designated player. He's one of your 3 U22 initiative players, and that's a cap hit of about $150,000 or $200,000, and you can handle that. So, if he slides into that, you're able to do it now, to get him now, and Olympia might need to sell now. They might need cash up front now. I think a lot of clubs of that size are looking for money now. Maybe they would have liked to have held on to him for a little bit longer. Maybe they wanted to try to move him to Europe, but they might not be able to wait. And if the check clears, and we know it would, you might need that right now. You can pay off whatever you owe Palmeiras. You can get good for now and then get ready for the Apertura to start late July, early August.
Yeah, Ricky's follow-up question was, would it make him a DP? And you've been going through that.
You can, I think, and we don't know what the salary would be, so no, we can't answer that. Nobody can answer that definitively because you don't know what the salary would be. I would assume that you can make this work to where he's not this season, and then he could fit into the U22 initiative, which is separate. That's the element that I think makes this make a lot of sense, is that U22 initiative coming in.
Yeah, Tafka was under the impression that Lopez would be one of those U22s that don't count against the cap, but he has been referring to Lopez as a Joseph protege.
That's slow down. Don't put those kinds of things on a young kid. He's that type of player. I think I use the word understudy. I think that's what I would say. Protege is expecting him to be Joseph Martinez, and we have never seen a player come in like a Joseph Martinez. Never happened. Now, we do have another
update from Bruno Pont.
Yeah, another little bit of stuff here. Bruno Pont says, attention, they confirm that the operation of Eric Lopez from Olympia to Atlanta United reaches $5 million. That would make it harder to fit as a designated player right now, or a TAM player. That would make it harder to fit as a TAM player. But if the U22 initiative is coming in, look, we've seen MLS do this before, where you have a rule that's going to hit the books. Teams start going ahead and operating as that rule's hitting the books. And you're not going to tell the league, hey, you can bring in, an 18-year-old who played in the U23 South American Championship, and he's going to fit for you next year, and you can bring him in now. Okay. You'll find a way. Maybe that goes back to Paul Tenorio's tweet. I don't know. Maybe I'm just trying to connect dots that aren't connected. I don't know. But $5 million makes it hard to fit as a TAM because, well, no, it's not impossible. I mean, if you're signing him to a 5-year deal, $5 million, it's spread over the life of the deal. I think you get a little extra consideration because if you're doing 5, you probably do 5.5 actually because you're signing him midway through this year. So 5.5 even helps you a little bit more. That takes the transfer money part of the cap hit to just under $1 million, and then you've got up to 1.6 as the TAM threshold, and you're probably going to pay him less than that, or you can probably finesse the numbers to make it work to where he is TAM'd now, if you have to do that, and U22 initiative next year and beyond until he gets to 22. So, yeah, I think you can still make it work. Hey, but this, Bruno Pont saying this, if you followed this team, if you followed this game, this is how the game's played. You know, oh, well, they've agreed to 3. They've agreed to 3.5. Oh, wait a minute. They've come back to the table, and now they want 5. I mean, yes. That's what happens. You know, is it going to be 5? Is it going to be 3.5? Is it going to be somewhere in between? Who knows? This is the game. This is what happens. So, let's not be naive here. Could Olympia know that Bruno Pont is a name and know that his word carries some weight and be saying, hey, yeah, we're pushing for 5. We're pushing for 5. Yeah. Because they need to show their fans and they need to show people that, hey, we value this player. We're not just letting a kid who came here at 6 years old go for nothing. We're getting as much money as we can. You've got to play the game on multiple fronts. So don't get hung up on the money. The money can work in a lot of ways, and I think that U22 initiative coming in makes it somewhat irrelevant in terms of cap and can you do it. It's just how much do you want to spend.
Joey Logan says
I can
that
see I got to crack open a Red Bull, sorry.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those mornings already.
Yeah.
Joey Logan says that we are all now disciplined to understand MLS restrictions. We're not just fanboys anymore.
I love it because it allows you, as we've said, throughout doing this show, it allows you to have these conversations in a real way. It's like other American sports talk. It's like leagues in Europe where it gets down to transfer deadline day and you kind of know what's going on for the most part. We know enough. We don't know everything. We try to reiterate what we know and what we don't. But we know enough to know, like, okay, this fits. This fits the profile. This is the kind of player you look for. This is also the kind of price you look at paying, and this is the kind of move that makes sense. It doesn't sound like Balotelli to Atlanta, which wouldn't make sense. It doesn't sound like one of those kinds of moves. It sounds like one that makes sense.
Tafka says, protege and understudy are the same for me. He says he just met a promising player, the perfect age. Now go and watch and learn from the king.
Protege, I just put on expecting him to be that player. So it's semantics over a word. It's not a big deal. I think you need to look at him as an understudy for a while, at least. Because, Joseph's going to be healthy, and he's going to take his spot back. We know this. So he's... if Eric Lopez is the guy, he's going to have an opportunity in the short term. And if he does well, then he's going to give Frank de Boer some good headaches in terms of how do you make it work with these players. There's also the Ezequiel Barco conversation about leaving. And you've got cover already, in my opinion, with Josetu and right now with Castro. You've got attacking cover. But if you add another player like Lopez, you've got attacking cover in 3 different ways. Because Lopez can play up top, can also drift out wide. Castro is a player who has traditionally played out wide, and we'll see if he can play tucked in a little bit more. And Josetu is a player who's honestly played a little bit deeper, but can step up into that more attack-minded playmaker kind of role. So you've got a pretty diverse group of players, and you're good now. You add Lopez knowing that Barco is probably going to go at some point in the next, 18 months. I'm not expecting him to still be here. okay, you're adding another player that you'd probably have for, a 5+ year deal with the expectation that you're going to make a sale of him if he does what you think he's going to do before that. And that's how the game's played.
Now, when I was watching Lopez last night, I noticed the activity out wide, noticed that when he was on the left-hand side, how he would cut inside and have a big right foot, when he'd be on the right-hand side, and how he'd want to work his way through and work with the left. And you mentioned the physicality, and that was something that in playing those tapes back in my mind that I noticed that when he was challenged in the middle third, he was, he would stand up, take the hit, spin off, go, and the
balance
creativity
was the first thing I noticed. It was really weird because that's not something I'm usually looking for, and I think in highlights it's not something you always catch. It struck me from the first tape I saw, and there's multiple ones out there. You can get a sense of what kind of a player he is, but the first one I saw, it just felt like players were bouncing off of him, and he wasn't being affected by it, and that grabbed my attention. Then you start to look deeper, and you see both feet, and you see some of the first touch, and you're an 18-year-old, you're a 17-year-old, and you're breaking into the U23s, and you're called in for the Olympic qualifying. It says a lot. You come in and you score 3 goals in your first 3 games as a professional. That says a lot. This is a player who's got a little something different about him. It's not your typical young player. There's a little extra maturity here, a little extra sauce to him.
Yeah, the creativity I noticed in the videos that I saw, the speed obviously was there for me, and just the ability to come in from the edges and work toward the middle and use either foot. Those were the 3 things that stuck out for me.
Look, Jarrett makes a good point. Last summer we watched the LA Galaxy somehow bring in Christian Pavone and make it work with the expectation he would become a designated player this year. This is not even that. This would be making something work with the expectation he becomes a U22 initiative player, whatever that's going to end up being called. We need a catchy name. I think Young Money was
Young
where
DP. Young Money.
No, Young Money's where the athletic guys were going. I don't know, maybe something better than that, but it needs a catchy name. He's going to go into that role, which is going to help you roster-wise. But, yeah, you're going to find a way. If you can get him now, they're going to find a way to make it work now. I think they might be able to make it work as a TAM anyway. I think there's just an expectation that when a guy is sold for a lot of money, that his salary is very, very high. Yeah. That's not always the case. That's not always the case, especially with young players like this that you're buying upside.
Katie Weaver's wondering if there is a Lopez deal. Does that mean that Jurgen Damm is off the table?
We haven't heard anything about Jurgen Damm. I would assume that it would be. And this is a move that makes more sense because Damm would be making more in salary than an Eric Lopez would. Doug just tweeted that Atlanta United has no roster spot, much less an international spot. I've talked about that. I'm going to double check. I looked at it a couple days ago because MLS has finally updated the rosters for where they fit into categories.
Yeah.
They quietly did that during the break. And there's a senior roster spot. They have 19 of 20 spots filled. They have 3 of 4 supplemental spots filled. The first supplemental spot. I think it's all the reserve roster spots are filled. Let me make sure they've got this right. Oh, they rephrased it. So everything's supplemental off of the senior. There's not supplemental and reserve. There's just 2 different sections. There's 1 supplemental spot available, but that's a minimum salary player. That's not going to fit Damm or Lopez. A senior roster spot, you can do what you want. The international spots right now, Castro, Luis Fernando, Pity Martinez, Fernando Meza, Jake Mulroney, Mateo Sosetu, Anton Walks, Lawrence Wyke. Would not surprise me at all if this possibility comes up, if Wyke or Luis Fernando, probably Luis Fernando, is loaned to Atlanta United to make the room. That's the way it would go. So you could do this straight away. That's an easy fix.
Yeah, Tafka was thinking that if the loan down was needed, he was going to guess Wyke. And with the squad fully healthy, he's got Walks, Robinson, Meza, Escobar, Castillo, Campbell, and Bello all available. So his guess was Wyke.
It could be either one. I think it's Luis Fernando because you'd be bringing an attacking player in. It just depends on, are you looking at Luis Fernando as a wing back where you'd like to have some extra cover? Are you looking at Wyke as strictly a center back? Either one, it doesn't really matter. Both still need games. So you could loan both if you wanted to make room, if you could find another senior roster spot. Yeah, you want both of them to play. They're both going to play for Atlanta United too this season. So one, you can take the hit and loan them for the year to create the international spot.
So we will now be keeping an eye on Bruno Pont on the Twitters.
A lot of people. I mean, he's not the only one, but yeah, it's gonna keep going, and it's gonna be talked about, and we'll see where it goes. Do we have anything else on Twitter about it?
No, we are caught up on Twitters when it comes to Eric Lopez.
Couple questions in the Twitch chat. Chris Ashley's excited, says he's got Miguel Almiron's eyebrows. Okay, didn't notice that, Chris.
On those grounds alone.
Yeah, nice. ATL Josh B asks, has there been an update on John Gallagher? And there has not. Don't know what the latest is on Gallagher. He's back. His loan at Aberdeen has ended. He's on the supplemental roster in that senior minimum salary player section, slots 21 to 24. He's there on the roster right now. I have not seen him training, but I haven't heard that he isn't training. So I'm not sure. This is just one of the things that's challenging right now is, reporters aren't at training because they can't be, because it's not safe for them to be. So it's not safe for the players to have the reporters there is probably the better way to put that. So we don't know. We don't have some of these details. I don't know. He's under contract is all we know. But I don't know if he counts towards this, if they're factoring him in, or if they're maybe trying to find a way to get him back to Aberdeen. He was very well liked at Aberdeen, played a good bit, but we know Aberdeen's situation as well. They don't have any money. They can't really bring in anybody on extra salary right now. Maybe you can find a way to make it work. I don't know. He's still under contract, though, yes.
Artemis Prime wants to know if we've heard anything regarding Manuel Castro's loan, and could that open a senior roster spot?
You've got a senior roster spot. First off, you have a senior roster spot according to MLS. And there's nobody else who could be in one that's not in one. The supplemental guys are Gallagher, Brendan Moore, J.J. Williams, George Bello, Andrew Carlton, Luis Fernando, Lawrence Wyke, George Campbell, Lagos Kunga, and Kunga is loaned out. Carlton is loaned out. So, I mean, there's nobody who would be in a senior roster spot that's not in one. So you have one. You don't have to worry about Castro in that perspective. On the international slot, yeah, he's in one. We have not heard specifically, and by the original reporting, his loan was through June 30th. I don't think there's anything for him to go back to at the moment because Argentina's not playing, and Estudiantes didn't have room for him to play before. So I would assume that they would probably be very amenable to extending it and continuing it and letting him have more time here. I don't know why you'd want to push him out yet because you've barely seen him. So I'm expecting him to still be here. You've got a senior roster spot according to MLS's website. They have been known to be wrong, but I don't know how they could be wrong in this one. And you can make an international slot work. Those things are not going to hinder this.
Tafka wants to know if the traditional young DP rule still exists, or is the new U22 rule subsuming it? And that's a great legal word.
We don't know about the U22 rule yet because it was never set to be 2020. It was set to start in 21. We just have reporting about what it is. You do have the young designated player rules in effect right now, and that's the more important part. The 2021 roster composition, let's wait, because we don't even know what that's going to look like yet. Right now, you have that. He would count on the budget at $150,000, which is not much. So if you're able to get a player with limited but some first division experience in Paraguay, a player that you think can grow into something special, a player that Paraguay's federation thinks can grow into something special, they brought him into their U23s. and you can get him and he can hit your cap at 150,000, yeah, you like that kind of move. Because as Carlos Bocanegra has said, and as Doug has reiterated, and others have reiterated, there's not a ton of cap room here. There's not a bunch of cap space to work with. 150 is one of those kinds of numbers that you can find a way to make it work. That's not a big number to squeeze in. You can make that work.
Now we're officially caught up on Twitters for round one of Eric Lopez, and I misspoke because Tafka's just come back in. He goes, is it possible that MLS has just said about the U22 rule, we're advancing it now, too many sweet deals coming available in the World Soccer not to?
Easily. It's possible that they do what they've done many times with these kinds of rules. They know it's going to take effect next year, but they're going to let teams go ahead and operate under it this year, or give them some extra dispensation this year to make things fit with players who they know are going to fit into it next year. We've seen this before. That's the beauty of having a single entity, because you can do those kinds of things and just say, this is what we're going to do. And it's almost always done for these kinds of reasons, to bring more talent into the league. They've made it clear they want to bring in players that they think they can develop, get at a good price young, develop them, sell them on for more. This is that kind of move. So, yeah, I think they're going to find a way to make it work if they want to do it. If they want to spend whatever the price is, they're going to find a way to make all of this fit. Bernd Dursberger says he thinks that Gallagher was in the training video from earlier this week, which would make sense. He's here. He's available. So
now we're officially caught up until someone else puts something in the timeline when it comes to Eric Lopez.
We'll get more. I know we'll get more. It'll happen, and it's all good because this is going to start to spread around a good bit. Let's transition, and I think this might make a little bit of sense as we dig into it. I want to talk about Liverpool, and I want to talk about them winning the title yesterday, and the scenes we saw and the way everything went down. First off, really nice goal from Christian Pulisic. I think the American Twitter reaction is funny, because if Christian Pulisic doesn't make the 18 or doesn't make the starting lineup, he sucks. He's overrated. Then he scores a goal, which is a nice goal. He took it really, really well. The move on Mendy to lose him was really nice. And he took the goal really well. But it was a horrendous defensive play to allow him to break through. But now Christian Pulisic's the greatest player ever born in the United States.
Liverpool hero, Christian Pulisic.
No, it's beyond that. It's not about there being a Liverpool hero. That's a different conversation. He's the greatest player ever born in the United States. It's like, whoa, slow down. He's a top player playing in a top league. These are good things. Yep. This is good. Let's not crown him yet. He's still got a lot of work to do. He's still got a lot to prove. He's got competition for playing time every single week. That's going to make him better.
Give the man some time.
Yeah, it's not even that. It's just you can't say a player his age is the greatest player ever from the country. We're not there yet. That's insulting to Landon Donovan and Clint Dempsey and Hugo Perez and Tab Ramos and so many great players who have come through at different eras, and it's hard to compare. Pulisic has every potential to be the greatest player we've had, but he's got more to do, and let him do it. It's going to be fine. But we talked about this a little bit earlier in the week, and I wanted to dig a little deeper into it. The progression that Liverpool has went through under Klopp, they've had patience with him, first off. He came in, I forgot how long he had been there. I mean, he came in when Rodgers was let go in like October of 15. So he's been there a while. And he didn't have success straight away. First year, he did come in after the year started. Finished 8th in the league. They lost the League Cup final to City on penalties. They lost the Europa League final. They got there, but they lost those, and they finished 8th. He came in and he played a lot of 4-2-3-1. So he was shifting from Rodgers, who liked 3-5-2. He went to 4-2-3-1. That takes time. It looked really different early on for Liverpool because he came in with what he had done at Mainz and then at Dortmund. And we talked about this on yesterday's show about press, and we talked about it with the Red Bulls and what they're going to do in this MLS's back tournament. You use that to bridge a gap in quality. Mainz did it because they weren't a good enough team to compete at the time. They didn't have the same talent level on the field. They used it to jump up levels. Same at Dortmund. Now, he had more talent at Dortmund, and he won 2 Bundesliga titles, the last 2 since Bayern's won everything. But his Dortmund teams that won titles looked very different than his Liverpool team that won this season and was great last season. The gegenpressing, and everybody throws gegenpressing out about Klopp. It's counter-pressing. Basically, to try to make it really simple, when the other team wins the ball, when they recover the ball, they are disorganized because of what they had to do to win the ball. So you can, as they win it and as they try to get organized into an attack, they're disorganized. If you're counter-press, so you lose the ball, and then you immediately try to win it back, if you do it well, you can win it, but not just win it and then keep it like we saw Pep Guardiola's Barcelona teams do a lot. You can win it and then go direct to goal. You can win it and immediately go. That was the different element that Klopp really worked on. Things that have changed, and if you've watched Liverpool this season, like this sounds foreign, and this was the same manager. At Dortmund, Klopp often went down one side of the field with his attack. They would build up play on one side, and that was twofold. One, they'd try to overload a side, which is typical. You want to overload a portion of the field. But two, it allowed that counter press to be more effective because all your players were bunched together. You could immediately try to regain possession, and then you had the numbers to go to goal quickly. You also used the sideline as a teammate, essentially, when you were pressing. So you're able to do that. You had certain triggers with a press, which is typical, which they still have now. They don't press as much as they used to. Look at the differences up top, too, and this is maybe one of the biggest evolutions for Klopp. He had Lewandowski at Dortmund. Traditional number 9, like prototypical number 9. Roberto Firmino is the opposite of that. Because a lot of times he drifts back. He's a false 9. He drops into the midfield to create space for the players around him. The wide players at Dortmund wanted to stay wide. Why? They wanted to put in crosses to Lewandowski. Duh. It's a good idea. The wide players at Liverpool in the attack, they're not drifting wide. You're not seeing Mane and Salah going wide and putting in a bunch of crosses. They're running the narrow channels. They're coming inside, and they're running into that space that Firmino leaves. Where's the width coming from with Liverpool? Your outside backs, which are elite. Your outside backs, those players, those two for Liverpool, have allowed Jurgen Klopp to change who he is. Because at Dortmund, the outside backs were defenders. They were defenders first. They would be used in pressing situations, but it was always about, all right, we've got to have one stay, one can go, one can step up higher, the other one has to slide in. Typical with a line of 4 where ball's on the left side, Dortmund wants to build up the play through the left side, the left back can step up higher. The right back tucks in, and you have a line of 3 defending. Well, at Liverpool, you don't have that. Dortmund didn't really like that big switch. Liverpool loves it because their outside backs are their playmakers. It's very different. Very hard to deal with. The other element that's changed is where Dortmund got progression in the team in the midfield. Liverpool's midfield is more about control and sitting deeper. And now with both outside backs going, somebody's got to help the 2 center backs. Also helps to have, the best center back in the world in Virgil van Dijk. That allows you to take a few more chances too. But you've got to have midfielders who will sit and protect if both your outside backs are going. So where Dortmund was one-sided for the most part in the way they attacked, their attack a lot of times was honestly just to set up a counter press because that's where they were effective. And generally what they did is they'd try to pick out a winger when they won the ball, put in a cross to Lewandowski, go. If they didn't have the wing option, they would win the ball and then go direct to Lewandowski and play through him. That's not what we see at Liverpool for a couple reasons. once you get to be that team, once you become that team that is great, every great team's going through it. How do you play that team if you are Burnley, if you are Stoke, if you are any team outside of the top 6 and even some of the top 6? You're going to sit back. You're going to defend. You're not going to allow them to press you because you're going to act like the ball has cooties. Mm-hmm. You're going to do everything possible to try to get out of there scoreless, period. If you get something lucky the other way, great. So you can't really press that team. So you have to be strong in possession. You have to be strong in recycling possession because you have to create openings. How do they do that? Pretty simple. A lot of things we've talked about with Atlanta United, honestly, in that, with a number 9 who can move, and Joseph did this even before we're talking about a false 9. That number 9 has to move the defense to create openings. You've got to have fluidity in the attack, and you've got to have width. You look at the way Atlanta does it, it's a different shape, but the principles are kind of the same here because you have, at the beginning of the season, Joseph not injured. You had Joseph up top, but we know he would drop deep and he would move around and pull defenders with him and create openings. You had Barco and Pity Martinez who love to run those central channels, not play out on the touchline. They can go out there when they need to, but where do they want to be? They want to be making those runs into the 18. Barco's becoming very good at this. We've seen multiple goals of Barco crashing on the back post. That was not his game at Independiente. Not his game at all. He was a number 10 playing on the wing because you wanted to protect him from any defensive responsibilities. Here, he's sliding in and crashing at the goal like a poacher. Love it. So, Pity and Barco are not Sadio Mane and Mo Salah, but playing style with their number 9, it's kind of similar, to be honest. And then Atlanta wants to get width with their wing backs in their case. They have 3 in the back, so you're not worried as much about the protection from your 2 central midfielders as Liverpool needs to with a line of 4. But you want Brooks Lennon, you want George Bello, or Jake Mulroney, or anybody else you put in those roles. You want them to stretch the team. You want them to stretch the opponent out wide, put in crosses, but also not just put in crosses, cutbacks, and provide that big switch when needed. You want them to drive to goal as well. Liverpool's not a team, you're not looking for a bunch of headed goals. You're not looking for, Bobby Firmino to turn into Lewandowski. You're looking for those cutbacks. You're looking for space to be created. You're looking for 1-2s. You're looking for penetration. So that part's actually really similar, which is pretty interesting to me. But they come at it, Frank de Boer and Jurgen Klopp, in different shapes, but it's the same mentality. But Liverpool had to do that. Because if you go back and look at year 1, you look at year 2, you look at how they developed. 1, they started to add top players, so that helps you. Year 3, you added Andy Robertson, you added Mo Salah, you added Oxlade-Chamberlain, Trent Alexander-Arnold became a first-team player. That's year 3. Your first 2 years, you were trying to be a pressing team. You were trying to, be a team that was disruptive. But if you look at the difference from year 1 to year 2, and I went back to look at some of the stuff yesterday to look at his progression a little deeper. I think something that's interesting, even that early, they were still pressing, and they still press now. But earlier on, their defense was weaker. Their defense had to start from the press up high. They wanted to protect their back line. They didn't want the ball in their half. They didn't want the other team to build up in their half because they worried about their back line. Well, now you don't have to do that as much, first off, so you can start your press deeper. But you're not pressing as high, but you've gotten better defensively. You've also, in one way, you're limiting chances for the opposition is you're more comfortable with the ball. From year 1 to year 2, their possession average went from 56.2% to 61.4%. That's a big jump in 1 year. It's twofold. I mean, they wanted the ball more. They weren't just looking to go as fast as possible. Also, teams were dropping off of them more because they started to realize, hey, this team is a threat. And you add Virgil van Dijk, and that gives you the ability to go even more because you've got the best center back in the world. So you can commit more numbers to go forward. You can risk more because he's going to fix a lot of mistakes. He's that good. The big things, you look at it, they're not what Borussia Dortmund was. And managers who don't realize that they have to look at the game differently because situations change every year, even at the same club. Managers who don't do that are managers who become limited. Jurgen Klopp has become a very well-rounded manager, and he can have a team control 75% of the possession. If that's the way to beat the opponent, his team can do that. If the way to beat the opponent is to have 40% of the possession and press and create mistakes, he's got a team that can do that. And he knows when to make the switches and when to change the approach. That's something that comes with some time. It comes with some learning. It comes with patience from the club. It took him 5 years to win the title. I think he said when he was introduced, in 4 years we'll have a trophy, which he did. He had the Champions League trophy last year. But 5 years to win the title, 4 years to become one of the best teams we've ever seen. And to become that in a different way than Pep's Manchester City, which was the previous 2 years, was one of the best teams we've ever seen. These are the best two teams over a 2-year period. Manchester City's 2 titles, Liverpool's second by a point last year, but a Champions League, and the title this year, and it could be a record number. Those are the best 2 seasons back-to-back we've ever seen in the Premier League. Probably ever seen in the first division in England. And they're different. It's not a carbon copy. They're different. And that's what's great about this game is Pep comes from one place. Pep comes in his DNA. Pep is, I want the ball. I want the ball, full stop. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get the ball, and then I want the ball. I'm going to win with the ball. Klopp came at it in the opposite way to start. He came at it in, I want you to have the ball because I can create chaos, organize chaos. His heavy metal football. I can create more from you having the ball and taking it from you. He called the Gegenpress his playmaker. Well, now his playmakers are his outside backs. And he made that change, and he's evolved. He can go back to his DNA, and that's going to be the start of his DNA, where he wants to create those moments of transition. Pep wants to create breakdowns in the other team with the ball. And they've both created, in 1 year that overlaps, 2 of the best teams we've ever seen play the game. It's very cool to see it done differently in the same place. And when they match up, it's always special because it's, at its heart, at their guts, they look at the game differently, but they can both do elements of what the other does. That's what's so special about it. So you have to don't let anybody tell you that it needs to be an asterisk by this title. Don't let anybody put that nonsense on it. This is one of the best teams you'll ever see, and Jurgen Klopp and his development over time is one of the most impressive coaching trajectories you'll ever see.
Daniel Price says as much as he wants to feel happy for Liverpool winning the Prem, he says it will always have the asterisk.
No.
He feels bad for them when they deservedly won it all.
Why? Why is there an asterisk by it? There's nothing that deserves an asterisk by it. They came back and they needed 6 points. There's nothing about the conditions they've played under that has helped them. They needed 6 points. They drew the first game. They looked bad against Everton. It looked like it affected them in a negative way. There's no asterisk. Manchester City was not coming back before we knew what coronavirus was. The league was over. The league was done. I think it was Jose Mourinho, actually, when he was working as a pundit in the first half of the year, when Liverpool had raced out to a lead. I think there was a 9-point difference when they met, and they asked him he was on Sky, right?
Yeah.
Jose was working for Sky?
Yeah, Sky, I think. It was either Sky or BT.
I think it was Sky. They asked him, this. What do you think about this game? How important is it? Et cetera, et cetera. He's like, look, you guys can't say this, but I can say this.
Yeah.
If Liverpool wins this, they won the league. They
Yeah.
won the league. It's 12 points. They won the league. They did. I mean, this thing's been done for a while. So no asterisk. I'll push back on that every single time. This is one of the most impressive seasons you'll ever see. Pandemic or not, the pandemic didn't give them a title. Anybody who tries to float that out's incorrect, in my opinion.
This was clinched with, 7 games left to play?
Yeah.
That's the earliest that this has been clinched in the history of the league. And what Liverpool has pieced together this season with the run of form and just boat racing everybody to get out to that margin, everybody knew it. I mean, once again, if you're playing, you're obviously playing for what you're chasing. But those of us who are watching it and covering it, you're sitting there going, this is done. This was done early, done, dusted, and you just wondered what Secretariat was going to do at the Belmont. You wondered what the distance was going to be by the time we're done.
Yeah, and they got it. You will remember this season for the pandemic, obviously. You'll remember the celebrations being what they were, and there were a lot of people out without masks in Liverpool last night.
Mm-hmm.
You'll remember all of that. You'll remember Jurgen Klopp crying on TV because of how emotional this was for him. You'll remember those things, but that doesn't mean you put an asterisk by it.
No.
I mean, everybody said at the time there would be an asterisk by the 1995 World Series champion because they didn't play 162, right?
Mm-mm.
What they end up at 140 something?
Yeah, 140.
Somewhere around there. It's like, that's asterisk, put an asterisk by it. No, but I forgot all about that.
Yeah, I did too.
I had to, when they were showing all the stuff, when it was, we have no live sports, we have to show all old things. It's like, oh yeah, that season started late. That's right. I mean, I knew the season before there was no World Series, but I had forgotten that for 20 years. So that part will be forgotten. They didn't gain an advantage by this. So
no.
I think an asterisk needs to be thrown in the trash for them.
Chris Hutchison, though, does have a valid point.
Okay.
He says, Man City deserved to lose just for wearing those candy corn costumes yesterday.
Yeah, they're bad. I'm all for taking some chances with alternate
But that
kits,
rainbow sherbet outfit was no.
Yeah, it's no good. I think somebody called it a tequila sunrise, which, okay, I could see that. You might need some tequila after that one, but
yeah, exactly.
I didn't like it. Not a fan.
No, I mean, and you know me, I will go and look at the off the wall jerseys, and I will buy them because they're off the wall. I mean, I'm the guy that's going to sit there and look at the drip kit in Forward Madison and go, "Ooh, I like that," or something like that. But that Manchester City kit, that's about the end of it for me. That's not going in the on the coat hanger.
Yeah, it's an ugly kit. It's a very ugly kit. Let's see. So
we still have Liverpool thoughts if you want to keep going.
Oh yeah, well, happiest of Joes, Joe Johnstone is telling everybody they're welcome for Klopp coming from Dortmund. Mines might want to fight you, Joe, because they're going to claim a little bit of this too. Because that's where it all got really.
They get a little bit of the pass on.
They get a little bit. They get some of the development. They get some of the props. That's for sure. What else we got on Liverpool?
Well, he says Joe says, is Liverpool becoming the Bayern of EPL, or is the level of competition closer? I feel like both leagues are relatively similar talent-wise in the top 5. I'm not sure who I'd place higher, though, between Dortmund and City, since I'm a little biased. #BVB.
You're a little biased. City's better. The Premier League's better. It is at that level. I think it is in general. I think it's just down to the money. Joe's tripping me out because he's commenting on different platforms at the same time. I like it. This is funny. I'm like, where'd he go? Where'd he go? No, I think Dortmund right now is not as good as Manchester City. City's problem this year has been consistency. They've just been up and down. They had 2 of the best years you could have. I mean, it's hard to have a third. Three-peats are not easy to do, and to play at the level they did, it was difficult. Can Liverpool do this again next year? We'll see. They've got a Champions League. They don't have that to push for. They will, but they've got one. They've got a Premier League title now. Or are you going to have players playing in the same way? Do they slack off a little bit? Does the intensity drop a little bit? That's something a manager has to fight. Guardiola's talked about that. He always likes to freshen up the squad. Will Liverpool do that, or will you keep rolling with who you have? We'll find out. It's going to be interesting on that front. But let's see. You're comparing.
A lot of the big names are under contract until 2023 when it comes to Liverpool.
No, that doesn't mean anything. You can sell players.
Yes,
you can sell and reshape and move people on and all of that. But let's compare the tables real quick. It is the last week of the Bundesliga this weekend, and we'll talk a little bit about the landscape here in a second. But top 5: Liverpool, City, Leicester, Chelsea, Manchester United right now in England.
Okay.
In the Bundesliga, it's Bayern, Dortmund, RB Leipzig, Mönchengladbach, Leverkusen.
Premier League.
Even with the Premier League, I think the competition at the top has been a little more down this year. Tottenham fell off to 7th. Arsenal's dropped down to 9th. You've got a Leicester in there. You've got a Wolves in 6th. You've got a Sheffield United in 8th. Palace is 10th. Even with that, I still think the Premier League is better at the top. I think Liverpool and Manchester City are better than any two-team combination you can find right now in the Bundesliga, and Joe's probably breaking things because I'm dismissing his Borussia Dortmund. I just think they're a little bit better, and I think Chelsea's going to really push to be in that conversation next year. Yep. They might replace Manchester City in the conversation, or that might become a three-horse race, depending on this appeal that Manchester City has with CAS about what's going to happen with this ban from UEFA competition. So stay tuned on that. But I think Chelsea's going to make it even more difficult. RB Leipzig is going to be losing their best player. So I think that tells you what you need to know is the number 3 team potentially in both. One player is leaving the Bundesliga and going to the Premier League. I think the Premier League's the better league. The Bundesliga, Bayern's going to win it by at least 10 points. Now Liverpool is going to win it by a ton, but last year it was 2 teams with an unthinkable number and 1 point difference. So I still think it's better in the Premier League. I think the money is the biggest thing.
Arakauna_man on the Twitters thinks it was just a perfect season thing for Liverpool. I can't see them separating enough financially to do what Bayern does. And I think 2 through 5 in the Bundesliga is more like 4 through 7 in the EPL. Dortmund might be able to pull off 3rd.
I think the last part of that's completely valid. I do think Liverpool could separate financially enough to do this. One example of where they could create a little more separation is their kit deal. They got out of the New Balance deal early. They're going to go to Nike. And one of the reasons why they did that, even though New Balance offered them more money up front, was the royalty amount. Because Nike, you're going to sell more Nike kits than New Balance kits. It's just there's more Nike stuff. You can put it in more stores. It's going to be more widely available. You're going to make more in the long run with Nike than you will with the others. That's going to move Liverpool up into some projections right now are putting them in like 2nd or 3rd in terms of their money from their kit deal in the world. That's going to give them more money to work with. They're not having any problems paying the salaries for the talent that they have. The question is going to come up, Trent Alexander-Arnold, when it comes time to renegotiate, or is he going to push for a move? But where would you want to go?
Yeah.
That's the thing about what Liverpool's done now is where would you want to go? Barcelona in 2 years won't be the Barcelona that we know right now. Real Madrid still will be. You're not going to go from Liverpool to Bayern. It's not a knock on Bayern. It's just that move isn't going to happen for an elite-level player. Van Dijk, Alexander-Arnold, they're not going to make that move. There's nowhere else for them to go. Nobody's going to pay them more money, maybe outside of Real Madrid.
Yeah.
Like, that's really it. You're not going to go to PSG. You're not going to go to Juve in your prime. So they could create that separation. I think Chelsea's going to fight them because Chelsea's spending a lot of money to fight them next year. If City isn't banned from Europe, they're not going anywhere. This is the kind of thing that spurs Guardiola on to reevaluate and reimagine what he does. That could create a great season next year if they're not banned. If they are, who knows? Then it becomes a complete wild card on what City is. There's always the possibility that Manchester United figures out how the game is played. I know it can happen. I mean, talk about
as long as Ed Woodward is around, I'm not optimistic.
Hey, Ed.
Have you ever seen anybody play the game called soccer?
Apparently
I don't know. Maybe not. Just go, Ed.
The kid was right.
Just go.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, they've got the financial wherewithal to be up there. City obviously does. Chelsea does. Liverpool does. Tottenham's got to get everything right. Arsenal's got to get everything right. Leicester, Wolves, anybody else has to get everything right to compete. Liverpool could separate. They've got everything in place to separate from the rest of the pack. It's going to be about managing the individuals. It's going to be something that Klopp has never done. He had back-to-back wins with Dortmund, and he got to a Champions League final in like a 3-year span. But 3 years doesn't make you what Bayern Munich is. 3 years, he's going into year 3 now. He's got a Champions League. He had a great point total last year. He's probably going to beat that this year. He's got the league title this year. Next year is year 3. Can he motivate this group to continually push themselves? You know, I feel like because it was such a good documentary and it was recent, the Last Dance, it gives you a little bit of a glimpse at this.
Yeah.
Is there a figure in Liverpool? Because it could be Klopp, it could be Salah, it could be Van Dijk, it could be Jordan Henderson. I don't know. Who is going to be the Michael Jordan of that group to not accept any slacking off? Who is going to be that person? Because you do what they've done in the last 2 years, you do what they've done over 3 years, you slack off. You've done it all. You've rung, as Jordan said, after 3-year runs, he was done. He was done after the first 3-year title run. He had nothing left to give. He left. He went to go play baseball. After the second one, he says now he would have liked to have come back and done it, but he was exhausted. You know, I mean, 3 years takes a lot out of you. Are they going to have the ability to do one of two things? To look at it and say, we've got a great group, we're going to keep it together, and we're going to find internal motivation. That's tough. It can be done. It's tough. Or is Klopp going to be ruthless, like a Bill Belichick, like the New England Patriots, and say, you know what, this has been great, but we cannot maintain this level with the same group, even though, you know, we've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, who I think is an essential piece. Virgil van Dijk, an essential piece. You might have to sell a Mo Salah. You might have to sell a Robert Firmino. You might have to make moves like that to freshen up the group, to bring in somebody who didn't win the way that they did before. You might have to make some of those tough decisions. Are they going to be ruthless enough to do that? Or are they going to be sentimental and keep everybody together and then try to motivate them? That's tough. That's a tough spot. And you're coming up on year 3 next year. You know, what is the goal for next year for Liverpool? A double? To do the Champions League and the Premier League? I don't know what else it could be.
Yeah.
I mean, that has to be it, right? The FA Cup, the League Cup, who cares? The League Cup, they probably won't even be playing in. So is it, you know, just to do both of those? I can't think of anything else it would be. Yeah. And is that enough for a group that's already achieved everything? You know, are they going to have the same motivation? We'll find out. And Klopp and his front office is going to have to be, if you get midway through and you see that, you know what, this is not where we want it to be right now, you might have to make a big move in January to change the personality of that group. And there's not a lot of players who can come in and change that straight away, but still fit into what Klopp has created tactically. So it's going to be fascinating to see.
I mean, think about what Manchester City had to go through to get their quad. I mean, they were grinding to get that quad completed. And it was some of the best football we've seen out of Manchester City, and that's what it's going to take to get something like that done. This is, I guess, my pseudo-weekly plug for The Athletic. Great article by Pearson Hughes about Jurgen Klopp and the progression that came out today. And apparently they're going to be, they meaning The Athletic, they're going to be doing about a week and a half worth of Liverpool material, rightfully so. But the first piece that they did, it was on Klopp, getting Klopp in, changing philosophy. The pressing victims, I thought was a great passage, and learning about pressing victims. I know that when we're watching
pressing victims, explain that, because that
okay. Okay, so when you were talking about when Liverpool turns the ball over and getting the ball back quickly so they can turn and go, here's the passage that stuck with me. Before nearly every match since, Klopp has identified what he calls the pressing victim, and this usually is a defender or midfielder whose ability on the ball is considered dubious. The idea is to ensure the ball arrives at the victim's feet instead of someone else with more talent by pressing in the right areas and funneling the possession in his direction before hunting him down in a pack and stealing it away.
Yeah, it's the easiest trigger. I mean, it's the easiest trigger to plan, because you come into a match and you say, all right, number 3, he's bad on the ball. You want to force everything to him, and then you want to press him when he gets it. You want to take away his options. You want to make him give it back to you. That's easy. Like, other triggers are more complicated, but they're easy too. I mean, when you're looking at, okay, if it goes to the player's off foot, if it goes to their left foot, if they're right-footed, if it goes to where their body is turned up against the touchline, because a lot of times pressing teams will use the sideline as an extra defender. Those are a little more, players have to be really locked in to get it right every single time. If it is as simple as number 3, bad on the ball, every time he gets it, you want to force it to him and you want to press him when he gets it, that's easy. That's the easiest kind of trigger that you can find, and it's big. One of the other things about the press, and again, remember, Liverpool doesn't just press anymore. They're not just a pressing team anymore. They drop off a lot more. Yeah. They honestly look to trap a lot more than they press, and they pick their spots and when to press and which opponents to press. But you also, when you're looking at a press, the difference between something like what Klopp has done versus maybe a little bit versus what Matias Almeida does with San Jose, and somewhat what Jesse Marsch and Chris Armas have done with the Red Bulls, it's not even just go press the ball. It's take away passing lanes from the person on the ball. It's how you press. So if you're the outside back who stepped up high, you are trying to take away the pass to the player to your outside. You're trying to not let that player get to the outside of you. So your lane that you're going to cover and your angle you're going to take is to block that pass. Somebody else should be blocking the pass to another player. It depends on where you want to funnel the ball, because your press has to have a goal. Some teams, look, you're just pressing to press and you're just trying to create havoc and just you cause a turnover. It's chaos. San Jose is a lot of chaos. A team like Klopp, and especially as he has it for a while and he gets to go layer after layer after layer to it, you're trying to force the ball to a certain spot, whether it's a pressing victim you're trying to take advantage of, or where you have an overload. And that's changed for him. It used to be funnel the ball to the outside, because, and especially to the side where the ball is, so everything would get tilted. You try to cut off half of the field vertically. Now it's funnel the ball inside, because your midfielders are staying home, because your ability to create is coming from your outside backs. You want your front 3 and you want your outside backs to be your guys on the ball. Your 2 center backs and your 3 midfielders, that's where you're funneling the other team's possession into, because you want to put them into that trap where you have an overload.
Now, the point that you made earlier, Klopp told Liverpool players, the best moment to win the ball is immediately after your team just lost it. The opponent is still understanding his bearings and deciding where to pass. He will have taken his eyes off the game to make his tackle or interception, and he will have expended energy. Both make him vulnerable.
Yeah, I mean, you're not steady when you win it back in that situation. So you want them, a bad team, when they win it in that spot and they think they're about to get pressed, they just blast it long and give it back to you. A good team will try to play through you, and you have to be ready to know who you're playing, what your deal is on that day, and adjust. And that's where I think Klopp has become multidimensional, where earlier on he was one of the managers, which is typical with younger managers. Like, you come up with a game plan, you come up with a game model, and you roll with it every single time, and you make the opponent adjust to you. That's the one that keeps coming up when a lot of conversations here is like, you have to play your game, and you make the opponent adjust to you. Great managers adjust to the opponent every single time. Mm-hmm. Great managers focus on the opponent, focus on their weaknesses that you can exploit, and focus on their strengths that you need to worry about, and then you filter that through your game model. Your game model is not all-encompassing. Your game model is your philosophy, your DNA, but you filter the opponent's strengths and weaknesses through it to create your game plan for that week. You know, it's not just enough anymore to be one-dimensional in this game, to be elite. You can have a year where you come up and surprise everybody because it's something new. You can have a year where you beat a lot of teams because you're really good at something. You can't win titles consistently being one-dimensional. Not anymore. Too many good managers out there.
Tom Russo, the Airborne DJ, says he has the inspiration for those Manchester City kits from yesterday.
What is it?
Svedka Strawberry Lemonade.
Yeah, I kind of want some strawberry lemonade.
Ooh, yeah, that actually is pretty good. And Chris Hutchison says it's Quantum Klopp is the new nickname that I guess Chris has given Jurgen Klopp.
It's not bad. That's pretty good. He would probably like that.
All right. Katie Weaver has women's soccer questions on a Free Kick Friday.
Okay. Before we get there, you're going to talk about Steve Apolinski and let everybody know how awesome Steve is.
True. I can do that. Best way to do it, catch up with him at aa-legal.com. That's what the kids call a website. You dial up the website, low right-hand corner, you go to aa-legal.com, a chat window pops up. You can talk about anything on your mind. If you've got a case, wrongful death or serious injury, lower right-hand corner, live chat right now, 24/7, 365, aa-legal.com. You can also shoot Steve an email yourself, STEVE Steve at aa-legal.com. Get a free consultation at 404-377-9191. Recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend Magazine, top 100 firms in the state of Georgia. Wrongful death and serious injury cases over the last 30 years. In Georgia and Alabama, over $40 million in judgments. So that is what is on your mind, and you've got questions. Check out Steve at aa-legal.com.
That's what the kids call a website, huh?
The kids call a website.
What do you call it then? Because you're not a kid.
No. Since the kids call it websites, I have to go with the kids. I have to stay young, you know.
Okay, just checking.
Just checking. That's good. Good that you're keeping an eye on
Making sure there's not some other term that I missed.
No, because didn't the first web browser, didn't that pop up the last time Liverpool won a title? I'm trying to remember all of the things that they were saying.
Liverpool won a title in 1990. I don't know what I was on at that time on the web. That was pre-Prodigy days for me. I know Prodigy was out there. CompuServe was out there. It might have been Q-Link from Commodore 64, maybe. Oh, but that's how you connect. That's not the browser. You didn't really have a web browser in 1990, I don't think. I used Netscape in 95 when I went to college. Did that too? Oh, yeah. The big N in the low right-hand corner that was slow as hell. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, everything was slow as hell then. It didn't matter what you used. Netscape was the one that I used.
So I was right there with Netscape, and didn't they have like the dragon or something pop up behind it as a cookie or something? Like if you clicked on the logo, some beast came from behind at the end, and
it's possible.
And I'm just trying to remember, because I thought that there was some weird stuff that happened when I would dial it into Netscape. Of course, weird things happen when I dial into the internet these days anyway. So
this is true.
But Katie Weaver, with her questions on a Free Kick Friday,
like it.
They're all across the board. So
actually, no, we can't take Free Kick Friday. Jason Davis has got that for United States of Soccer.
Well,
that's gimmick infringement.
Okay, so then we're Freestyle Friday.
Freestyle Friday, yes.
Okay, so then Freestyle Friday, and she has 3 questions and is already thanking us in advance after her third one. So her first one.
Okay.
Reports of false positives. Is there any chance Orlando returns to the tourney? The answer to that is no.
No chance. No way they can make it work. It's just impossible because of the timing. You'd have to have... Look, I don't know what their testing procedures... No other team in the world has had this situation to this degree. This is very confusing.
Yeah.
Let's catch up on Julia Poe at the Orlando Sentinel and her report to try to give a little more clarity to it. By the way, I subscribed to the Orlando Sentinel this week. They've got a really good deal. It's $1 a week for the first 10 weeks, and then after that, I think it's
$8 a month.
Yeah, $8 a month. It's nothing. With MLS down there, with everything going on with the Pride, I felt like it was a necessity, and Julia does amazing work. So. Mm-hmm. Her article about the situation. No chance of playing, even with the inconclusive or positive that are now showing as false positive. It's confusing. So after they withdrew, additional rounds of testing, they're still going on, and I guess they're just confusing the situation because the team went through 2 rounds of testing last week. Sunday produced a total of 10 positive or inconclusive tests. Remember having this conversation because people were reporting it different ways. The NWSL said that 6 players, 4 staff had tested positive for coronavirus.
Right. Yes.
Orlando Pride never reported the number of affected individuals due to the concern over the validity of the tests after several results came back inconclusive. Third round of testing continued to provide inconsistent results, with some of the previous positives coming back as a negative or inconclusive. I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know.
Now, another thing that adds to this, too, is the Pride had asked about going to Utah early.
10 days.
To try to sort this out. But the league said no one could recall anybody asking about going early, which is really messed up.
Mm-hmm.
Teams arriving 3 days before the tournament's not a great format for the NWSL, and I'm sure it's down to cost. I do get that, but I don't know. Also, a league source told the Orlando Sentinel the testing that first flagged the Orlando Pride's problems were the result of several groups of players going out to a bar. The Pride declined to comment. There have been different people who have said that some of the people who were accused of going out to the bar didn't go to the bar, but I think some people went to the bar. Who knows? So now you're getting into a situation where you don't know how many people went out to the bar to begin with. You don't know how many tests are truly positive. You've had multiple retests after the fact, but not 24 hours after the fact, like 2 or 3 days after the fact in some cases. It's all over the place. I don't get it. I don't get their protocol. In MLS, and we've seen it here in Atlanta 2 times now, you have a positive test. The next day, that player has a retest to confirm. If it is the same result, it is what it is. And that's what we've seen with the 2 positive tests Atlanta's had. This sounds like they had positive tests, then 2 days later they tested again, and they got a different result, and then I guess 2 days later they're testing again, and it's like there's a lot of holes in this whole protocol and setup.
Mm-hmm. It's just I'm confused by trying to figure out. Okay, so you've tested, then you test again. Everyone reports, multiple reports. There's negatives, that they're positives. Then they come back negative or inconclusive. Then you're trying again to try, for lack of a better phrase, best out of 3, and trying to figure out where things are. But there was Twitter sleuthing and all that kind of stuff about. And it's just, and Ashlyn Harris actually came out on her Twitter account and was like, we have to, we're going to be supportive of our teammates, lay off of that kind of stuff. And props to Ashlyn Harris for doing that. Yes. But I have more questions now than I thought when I had answers when this whole thing began. It's like, all right, so it's reported one way, and now it might not, and maybe, and it's just you're sitting there, and you just want to take your pen and go,
I don't know what it means. I don't know how to talk about it. I don't know what's going on.
The only thing what we can do in this is just report what we know is out there, and that's about all we can do, because there's so many different pieces of information coming at you from so many different angles, saying so many different things. The only thing we really can do is just sit here and say, okay, here's what we think we know, because we don't really know.
We know they can't play in the tournament. We know that was ruled out, which is also bad. Like that. Yes. If you have all these confusing situations, couldn't you get some clarity first? I would think. I don't know. I don't know how this went down, but it has been botched. Like no way around it, and that's a bad thing for the NWSL. Add to some other distractions. They're distractions. I don't think they're going to be as big of a deal once we get started, but they are distractions right now. I mean, we shouldn't be talking about this the day before the tournament starts. We shouldn't be talking about a team sitting at home because they can't play because they have inconclusive tests now. We shouldn't be talking about players who are sitting at home. We should be talking about the tournament. And we will, but these are distractions.
Right now, just for those who might have juice box interest in the NWSL Challenge Cup on the weekend, Katie Weaver has also subscribed grumbling to CBS All Access, and she actually did admit that she was grumbling as she subscribed. $6. North Carolina Courage is minus 152 going up against Portland in the game that you're going to see on Big CBS with friend of the network Jen Hildreth and Allie Wagner. And so Portland to win outright's at plus 297. Your draw option is at plus 334. Your nightcap, Red Stars and Washington Spirit. I love the red shorts, by the way, for the Washington Spirit uniforms that came out. I love that combo. Red Stars minus 111, Washington Spirit plus 260, and your draw is at plus 246.
North Carolina all the way in that first game. The second one's a little bit tougher. That second one's a little trickier. I'm staying away from it. I want to see these teams a little bit more. But no Tobin Heath and North Carolina being what they are, all in on the Courage in that one.
We're in the boats.
Katie had more questions, didn't she?
That she did. She did. After grumbling about CBS All Access, she had a World Cup 2023 question.
Yes, it is going to be in Australia, New Zealand, after all the chaos yesterday.
Australia, New Zealand with an exclamation point. She's happy for the Kiwis and Matildas, excited to see the growth of the game there. Thanks in advance for sending her to be our SDH WWC reporter in 2023.
I don't know. Mike Conti might fight you on that one, Katie.
That's a long-ass flight. Man, oh, man. And then,
But if you're there for a month.
But pity the team that would have to play their group stage in New Zealand and then get shipped out to Sydney or Melbourne or something like that for a knockout game. I think that's even a 4 or 5 hour flight. That's a lot of travel. I mean, it's great. It's a little bit of a bummer that Colombia could not have gotten whatever issues FIFA had resolved, because I think a Women's World Cup in South America would be a great thing, but a Women's World Cup in Oceania will be very good too. So, if anything now, this might make it a little more difficult for the USA to get 2027, which I know is something that we've all kind of been hoping for, where you could have this this kind of run of, men's in 2026, women's in 2027, and then the Olympics in LA. 3 straight years of major international competitions in this country. I think now you're almost obligated to go to South America before you go back to North America. But we'll see. FIFA doesn't do things in logical ways.
FIFA's all about the money.
All right. So this was the question that I had, and I'll just pose it to the floor. When it came to the voting yesterday in the Women's World Cup, it was blocked. It was, CONMEBOL and UEFA basically voting for Colombia. Was that right?
Yeah.
And we thought, and we know the politics, and that politics play into all this stuff. Jason, yesterday you were going over the venues, the nation venues, really, that could host a World Cup these days, right? Yeah. And it's a limited group. Mm-hmm. And if UEFA is hanging out with CONMEBOL, block voting for 2023 to be in Colombia, but only a limited number of places can have a World Cup hosted in their part of the world anyway, and they're looking at 2030, wouldn't it kind of be in Europe anyway? I mean, is this just showing your guy is solid for 2030, knowing that it's probably going to be heading in a European direction anyway?
On the men's side?
Yeah.
No,
probably.
It probably, but it could go back to Japan. Japan could hold a World Cup. And if they don't get to hold the Olympics, by the time you turn around to 2030, they're going to be hungry to hold something. And that might be something they go after in a big way. It's all politics, though. That's how FIFA is.
Yeah.
I think what came out of it that I was impressed about was Gianni Infantino, and look, he's not perfect, and he's promised a lot of things that haven't come through. What he said, and Jonathan Tannenwald quoted it, and I was glad that Tannenwald pointed it out, the whole bid process and the whole evaluation process has to mean something. And 4.1 to 2.8 in terms of the scoring, it wasn't close. The bid was better for Australia and New Zealand. You have to follow that. It can't just be politics. UEFA looks really bad for supporting a lesser bid here.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem. But the bigger question, Mike, we talked about this yesterday. You look at the Men's World Cup, you look at the Women's World Cup, you look at the Olympics. There's only a handful of places that can hold these events anymore. They can't just go wherever anymore.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Women's World Cup, the list would probably be a little bit longer.
A little.
Because you can probably... I don't know if FIFA has really come up with a baseline seating capacity for its World Cup venues, at least on the women's side. I know when they were in Canada in 2015... Yeah, they do on the men. On the women's side, they played in Halifax in I want to say a 15,000 seat stadium. It didn't look good on TV, by the way, at all. It looked terrible. So I don't know if FIFA has that standard in play. I would certainly think by 2027 they should.
Yeah.
I can't imagine a situation where it's going to take more than 7 years for the Women's World Cup to easily generate a 40,000 ticket per match demand. So you're probably right. You're probably right that if you can't host a men's World Cup, you probably won't be able to host a women's by 2027. But yeah, let's think about it.
The only difference between the two before we get there would be the size. Yeah. Because the men are going to go to 48 teams, which will be harder for a lot of countries.
So you need
really
a number of venues.
The women's a smaller tournament.
That's why I think you're going to have joint bids going forward.
Good point.
And you might have an England-Ireland joint bid. You may have a France-Belgium joint bid. You may have, because quite honestly, in a 48-team men's World Cup, I don't know if France could pull that off. You might need to include Belgium. Honestly, the nations that are going to be able to pull this off on a singular basis are nations that have not hosted World Cups before, and China is one that absolutely stands out to me.
Yeah.
China will get there.
They've had the women.
China's there now, probably.
But you're in a different... It was 2007 where they had the women. They were supposed to have it in 03,
Right.
and SARS outbreak pushed it here.
Right.
07 they had it, and it's a completely different tournament now. But yeah, they could
and
have it.
And to be clear, I'm talking about a men's World
Yeah,
Cup.
they could progress to that. Good point.
Yeah, I think you're. I mean, even the United States could pull it off. Could pull off a 48-team men's World Cup on its own, but you still needed to have the joint bid to get it over the finish line because,
Politics,
many parts of the world,
Politics.
the USA is seen differently than we perceive it.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I mean, I think you're right, Jason. Outside of a joint bid, you're probably looking at China. You're probably looking at the USA.
England, Germany, I think both have the ability to do. They have the venues.
Yeah, but I think it's close for a 48-team World Cup.
I would do the UK because that would give you Glasgow,
the UK
give you
unified
Dublin,
bid.
give you Cardiff.
Yeah.
I mean, do a UK, not an England.
Yeah,
so,
FIFA
you're
is
right.
you have to look at it that way. Yeah,
You could play in, as you said, Cardiff. You could play in Aberdeen, I guess. They're going to build a new stadium. I don't know how big it'll be.
it wouldn't be big enough. I don't think.
Yeah, maybe not. Outside of that, boy, oh boy, I think you're right, and that's gonna be very interesting to kind of watch down the road. And with the global economic downturn that's going to accompany what we're going through right now, I don't know if there's going to be a real binge on building new stadiums for the next decade. So that's going to put places like China. And good shout on Germany. I'll give you Germany, maybe Italy, maybe Spain, the UK, and then some joint bid situations where maybe, like I said, you do France, Belgium, or you do, Germany, Spain, Portugal, maybe Czech Republic, Poland, like you do like an Eastern Bloc joint bid. Like you could probably pull it off. Ukraine, Russia, although Russia obviously just had it, so it's going to be a wait for them. That's where I think we're going to be at, because you're not going to be Cotter who's going to say, okay, yeah, we will build 6 venues in the next 8 years to get up to where we need to be. No one economically is going to be in the position where they can do that.
Yeah. Now that is just that kind of a question going forward. When I was trying to absorb the politics of it, knowing that the politics is there in the room anyway, this seemed almost a little redundant in the idea of, yeah, we know it's probably going to end up coming our way in 2030 for a World Cup anyway, but we'll back you now. I guess it's an insurance policy or something. It was just like, okay, if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, because it will be Europe's turn in 2030, won't it? I mean, if you want to count Qatar as Africa,
unless you do your China
Asia.
bid, Mike, like you were talking about.
It would block China because it's in Asia, so it would block China from having it that quick in a turnaround.
Okay,
it would be Africa.
But where?
Would be. Well, no, that's the question, but that's never
Morocco.
stopped anybody from bidding.
Yeah, I mean, Morocco will probably bid. They seem to bid a lot.
They have. They've pushed
Egypt
for it.
might bid.
But you could see a joint bid with multiple North African countries.
Like a North Africa bid where you're in multiple countries.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I mean, in terms of proximity to Europe, that's the next closest thing to a European World Cup. Like, if you had a joint Morocco, Egypt, Tunisia bid,
Algeria.
Algeria. Like in some cases, your flight from Europe to some of those places is like hell. It's probably faster to fly from Italy to Egypt than it is to fly from Italy to Dublin, Ireland. I'm guessing.
Yeah,
I'm not positive. My geography teacher is probably screaming if she's listening at this right now. But,
so does mine from college.
Yeah. But again, I mean, long story short, I do hope South America gets a chance to host a Women's World Cup. Brazil could probably do it. You don't think?
With the infrastructure
because of the
falling
government.
down?
Well, but we're talking about 7 years from now.
They wouldn't put the infrastructure to the women's game. They don't respect it the same way.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah,
Would Argentina?
Maybe they'd be more likely than Brazil, I think, and it's been longer since they've done anything with FIFA. You're going back to '78. I do think Colombia would be one to look at again. I mean, the fact that they went through this, and this is typically how this process goes, you bid for one, you learn. You learn what FIFA's looking for. You learn what you need to do. You learn where the bad marks were on your grade, and you fix it. And Colombia for 27, yeah, they absolutely should bid again. I think Argentina could come into it. Brazil's just a wild card. I think 2014 has left a little bit of a bad taste in the Brazilian public's mouth of going for a big event again, 2014 and 2016, to be honest. Yeah. Because they spent so much money and, public works and public health and all kinds of public dollars were shifted, and that really upset a lot of people. I don't know if there's the political and governmental will to go for it again. I think that's why they bowed out of this one. I'd say Colombia or Argentina and the U.S. would be the ones that would be pushing for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you could even see a joint U.S.-Mexico bid. I don't think that would be a bad idea. I mean, Canada obviously just had it, but
FIFA's going to get to a point where they worry less about the rotation and more about success.
Who can do it?
Yeah. Like Olympiads now, where it's only a very limited number of places that really could host an Olympics with the infrastructure that's in place, and you're not spending a lot of money.
Right, and there are a lot of places that don't even want to host an Olympics right now because of the money that goes into it. But let me ask you this. So in 2027, how many teams are we going to have in the Women's World Cup? Is it 24? Is it...
The idea is to go to 32, but I don't know if they have specified when.
Okay, so let's assume it's 24. You could do a joint bid with, let's say Monterrey, Mexico City, Guadalajara, Phoenix.
And the new Mazatlan Stadium, they're going to want to go there.
Sure, yeah.
So it will be 32. Because 23 will be 32.
Okay, so you need at least 8, maybe 10 venues. You could do 4 Mexican venues, and you could do 6 in the southern U.S. You could go Atlanta, Miami, Dallas, Houston, Phoenix, and L.A. Mm-hmm. You could absolutely pull that off, keep your travel reasonable, pool teams and groups where, if you're playing in Monterey, you're also playing in Houston to minimize travel. You're in the same time zone. That way, it could be done. I think then the issue you're going to get into is how do you have a World Cup and you not play in your glamour American markets like New York and D.C., like that Northeast corridor. But I think from a travel standpoint, you could do a joint U.S.-Mexico bid. Keep everything basically south of I-40 and have a really, really good World Cup, Women's World Cup.
Chris Kilroy is apologizing if this has been discussed, but since we're on women's soccer, he says with Tobin Heath, Megan Rapinoe, and Carly Lloyd, but that's with injuries, Chris. So with Carly's injury. Tobin Heath, Megan Rapinoe, and Carly Lloyd sitting out the NWSL season, is it a leverage move against U.S. soccer? I know these women have done tons for the women's game. I feel like this is a moment that the NWSL needs them.
They're not positioning it that way, so I don't think so. I don't think... The only one where I think there's any question about that would be Rapinoe because there hasn't been a statement.
Yeah.
The other two, Press and Heath, said it's about coronavirus, and that's absolutely a valid reason. It's surprising there's not more if that was a big concern among the player base, but I don't think there's anything more to it. I think it's as simple as that. With Rapinoe, could it be more? Maybe, but I would have expected that if there was an organized, we're going to protest against U.S. soccer because of the whole equal pay lawsuit and that more national team players would have sat out. Yeah. I don't think one player is going to do that on their own.
Well, and at the same time, I mean, yesterday she puts out a tweet, congratulating Australia and New Zealand for winning 2023 and saying she's going to might have to hang around for a little while longer. But once again, there's no mention of anything involving the NWSL, which is coming up tomorrow.
Right. I just wonder if there's a breakdown with the club. Sorry.
Yeah, I think there's another option, too, where she might not want to be a distraction. We talked about this a little bit on Wednesday. I mean, Megan Rapinoe is not going to be a puppet. She's not going to tweet something because she's asked to. She's not going to say something because she's asked to. I think it's pretty clear that Megan Rapinoe is very much her own person in that regard. And maybe she feels that if she has a reason for not going to Utah that would serve as a distraction or undermine the tournament or undermine her team, that she might be better off keeping her mouth shut. That's another option, too. I think she kind of owes it to her fans and the league to say something, but I think we have to consider the possibility that there's a legitimate reason why she hasn't said something.
And I mean, for me, though, I would just, even if there is something, there's that whole idea about being the, quote, team player, end quote, where you're showing support for your national professional league, something that really is at a key moment in its existence right now. And I mean, even if you have something against your team, sit there and say something positive. Can't wait to see all these great stars and all my teammates starting this weekend in Utah, something like that. And it's just, I'm still, obviously we don't have any answers, but it's just like, I would think that this would be one of those times where you could say something, be a good team player where the league is concerned, even if you have issues against your own specific team and what they may or may not be doing for you with OL,
Have you guys been talking at all about the Orlando Pride situation this morning?
Yeah, it's baffling.
And we're as confused as ever.
Well, if what had been reported last night is true, that there were some false positives, then
I don't even know if they have that yet, though. I think they're still at the inconclusive stage, and I don't know how they could be
all
there.
Right, then you know what? I'll withhold my comment.
No, I think it's a valid comment because this shouldn't be this way, regardless.
Okay, you know what? I'll say it anyway. The NWSL protocols failed to the point where it took a team out of the tournament. Mm-hmm. Okay, the MLS protocol is when you test positive, you get a backup test in 24 hours to confirm if it's positive. There's no NWSL protocol where, at least up to this point, there has not been an NWSL protocol dealing with retesting a positive within 24 hours to confirm. So the fact that it's inconclusive does change this a little. But let's say the backup test comes back negative. The fact that you did not have a protocol in place to deal with this means you just had a team basically abandon its season when they didn't have to.
Yeah, when they maybe didn't have to, yeah.
Yeah, and that's extremely unfortunate.
Yeah.
Extremely unfortunate. Because, I mean, if you have 6 players test positive and you assume that those tests are correct and you're 3 or 4 days away from going to Utah, you've got to make the difficult decision to withdraw. I don't know how many players are on their first team roster. I mean, I guess there probably could have been a way where they could have played on and the infected players could have entered the bubble later. I don't know. I mean, they may have possibly been able to keep going, but I understand why they made the decision they made. But if you find out on Saturday that of your 6 positives, 5 were actually false positives, oh, my God. How gut-wrenching would that be? How gut-wrenching is that? And it's a situation that could have been avoided if the NWSL protocol would have required Orlando Pride to immediately retest those 6 players. Very unfortunate situation. And I hope that other leagues, I mean, it seems like MLS and the NBA, they have pretty rigid and strict protocols. PGA Tour as well now. But I hope other leagues look at this. I hope Major League Baseball, as they finalize what they're doing, the National Hockey League, as they finalize what they're doing, collegiate conferences, as they finalize what they're doing. You have that big outbreak at LSU. What if you find out later that of the 30 players, 22 were false positive? And you find that out closer to the season when you're going to be taking guys out for a week or two. We need to learn from this. And I'll go back to, if you can't afford to do testing the right way, you can't play right now. Right. That's where we're at in this country.
Yeah.
If you can't afford to do testing the right way, don't play. And I think, unfortunately, in this NWSL case, because their protocols didn't go far enough, Now you've taken a team out of not only the tournament, but possibly the season if they don't play on after this tournament. It's just really, really unfortunate.
We haven't seen a team in any league in the world have inconclusive tests reported like this.
Right.
It hasn't happened. I don't get it. I don't know what's going on differently. The one thing that jumped out to me that makes me wonder about the whole process, Ashlyn Harris on Tuesday, after the announcement on Monday that the Pride were going to be out, she went to do testing on her own.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Other players did as well, and it was said there was some kind of response to it about for extra security, whatever. Why would that even be needed? Why wouldn't there be enough tests with the team doing them and organizing them to handle the situation to where it doesn't turn into this? Something's not right there.
Something's fishy.
Yeah, something's strange.
Something's really, really strange, and I guess we're going to learn more about it. But this is, again, the outcome of there not being a strict league-wide standard protocol. That's why MLS is doing a strict league-wide standard protocol. And by the way, for all the whispers and all the rumors and, I hear Team X has positives and Team Y has positives, since we heard about Atlanta United last Saturday, have we heard of one positive test anywhere in the league?
No, we have
Colorado.
Colorado. Okay.
Colorado. There's whispers about others, and MLS does not require teams to report. And this is probably a big reason why, because you don't want to report a positive until you confirm. You don't have to report anything. So why would you if it is one, if it is two, if it's what you would expect? And
my point is, guys, no outbreaks.
Yeah, that's the key.
You have all 26 teams in full team training right now, as far as we know, and no outbreaks. And the bubble's open. I mean, not literally open, but the bubble is operational. The bubble's operational. San Jose had a training this morning. I tweeted a photo. Orlando City went into the bubble yesterday. They're waiting now. As protocols dictate, they're waiting for clearance, and then they can start training. New York City and Dallas go tomorrow. So the bubble's up and running. But even in home markets and in some markets where you're having real problems right now in the public with the virus, you're not having outbreaks. You're not hearing of Houston Dynamo or FC Dallas having an outbreak. You've heard of a positive case in Miami, but not an outbreak. You're not hearing of outbreaks with Orlando. You're not hearing of outbreaks with the Southern California teams where they're having a problem right now. Again, it's because the protocols are working.
Chris Kilroy says, as an aside about inconclusive COVID-19 results, he's taken 3 tests this summer himself. The first was inconclusive. The next 2 were negative. So that's what Chris has gone through. Oh, and speaking of...
I'd be curious. Has Chris had symptoms?
Don't know. Chris Kilroy, let us know.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'm wondering why. I mean, obviously, if you test the first time inconclusive, I would definitely want to get another test. But I'm wondering what brought Chris to the point where he needed to get tested.
Yeah. And speaking of on the pitch in Miami, how about Breck Shea? The announcement came out yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good signing. I think for an expansion team that's still trying to come together a little bit, I hear the phrase in the NBA all the time describing a locker room leader as a glue guy. I think Breck Shea is going to be a good glue guy for Inter Miami. Good person to have in that dressing room. And I hope that means he's fully healthy and fully recovered. It's been almost a full year.
Yeah.
He suffered that injury in Seattle, which I think was mid-July last year. So it's been almost a full year. I know he was doing some rehab in the Atlanta facility until he was out of contract. So hopefully this means he's healthy and ready to go. I think he'll help Miami. I really do. I thought Breck was under a microscope sometimes unfairly here in Atlanta last year. I thought he was better than some gave him credit for. And I think just it kind of reminds me of Vince Carter with the Hawks a little bit. Like from a leadership standpoint, having Breck Shea in that dressing room, I think will be very, very good for a Miami team that's still trying to find its chemistry.
Yeah, he's a big personality. He can galvanize that group. I think he was a good part of the locker room here. And he's somebody that Paul McDonough knows really well. Brought him to Orlando. He came here, and then now he's in Miami. Paul McDonough knows him very well, knows what to expect. And, Breck was good here before the injury. He was effective. I think people got really hung up on what they thought Breck should have been earlier in his career, which isn't fair to him now. He is who he is as a player. He can play as a left back. He can play as a left winger. He's good in 1v1 situations. He can give you good service. I don't think he's an all-star in this league right now, but is he a guy who can play 20 games, 25 games for you and give you good minutes? Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So how much research have you done on Eric Lopez, Mike?
I'll just say this, and it's really exciting. It's very exciting. Makes a lot of sense. I don't know if he can be an allocation money player or if he has to be a designated player. If he were a designated player, you got a problem, obviously, an obvious problem.
I'm just about positive you can make it work within current rules and future rules.
He's 18, which would make him a young designated player, right?
Yeah, the cap's going to be minimal, so that you can make that work. I think you can fit it if you want. If you want to do it, I think you can do it.
Right. I would just say this. Let's be careful, because we've heard, Arzamendia definitely coming to Atlanta United. Yup Stam definitely coming to Atlanta United. And heck, that might still happen. I don't know.
Who was the first Mucha Plata?
No, you were thinking Villasanti. Villasanti was the one who was almost done.
Yeah, Villasanti. Done deal. Coming to Atlanta. Well, womp womp. So
it's true.
Let's just begin now. I mean, Fernando Meza, you heard rumblings about him. He did come. Barco, obviously. I mean, that was a saga, and he ended up coming. So I know it's from a credible. I know it's from a credible journalist. I would just say, before we start looking him up and buying kits and everything like that, let's just wait, because, Atlanta United can find ways to open up international slots, but I don't know even where they are with that right now. I think they have an open international slot.
They don't.
You do?
They've got MLS actually updated their roster designations while we were all dealing with a pandemic. So it's updated on the website now. 8 slots, they're all filled, but 2 of them are filled with Luis Fernando and Lawrence Weick, and both will probably play a lot with Atlanta United too. One could be loaned full-time. You can create a spot. You have a senior roster spot open. You have 19 of 20 filled.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's
checks
possible.
All the boxes.
It checks all the boxes. You can put Joseph on season-ending injury, and it opens up money. It doesn't open up necessarily a designated player spot.
No, but that would open the money for any kind of cap issue. So that's another good point. We haven't talked about that.
It's exciting. He looks. Boy, does he check off all the boxes. Young striker from a great club in Paraguay, and has contributed to them. Very, very exciting, but. I don't know. I feel like we've been burned so many times on these unsourced reports that we end up setting ourselves up for disappointment. So I hope it works out. It would obviously make a ton of sense. Yeah. But I also know that Atlanta United's very high on J.J. Williams, and I know they're very, very high on Adam John. And for that matter, they're very high on Josetu and Pitti and all the other false nine options that they could potentially have. So. We'll see. I mean, I think it checks a lot of boxes, like you said, to use your phrase, Jason, but we've been burned so many times before.
Yeah, just catching up on the latest for people who joined us after the start of the show. You've got reports from various sources in Paraguay now. It's really spread through a number of different sources. Transfer fee is anywhere from $3 to $5 million. ABC Deportes went with $3 million about an hour ago. I've seen it as high as $5 million. Any of that is workable over a 5-year deal. The rules, you can make it work. From what we know, and especially what we know is coming with this U22 initiative, you've got ways to make this work on multiple fronts. You've got the roster space. The cap space would be an issue, but there's ways to solve that. Is he the player? I think if this drags out, it's less likely. If this happens quickly, well, then it happens. Like Meza was quick. Right. There wasn't a whole bunch of, maybe, possibly, this amount of money or this. No, it happened. This would be
By the way,
if it happens quick. I think it's, I think that's the way it would go.
I don't know how I confused Jurgen Damm with the manager of Cincinnati, Jaap Stam.
I have
no idea how I did that.
That's close.
No idea how I did that.
It's a Friday. What's in the egg?
We're doing some andouille and chicken, and then we're going to put that in a jambalaya. And I'm going to try to do the jambalaya on the egg. Okay. We have a pot that will fit on there. I don't know if it's going to add any flavor doing it on the grill as opposed to not. But we'll see how it goes. We were at the Cajun Meat Market in Marietta a couple days ago, and we stocked up.
Yeah, see, the boss does, instead of andouille sausage, she does the Conecuh County sausage.
Yeah, but her
chicken in the jambalaya.
Her jambalaya is really, really good. We've all had it. It's delicious. So if we get to 80% of her level, we'll be happy.
And how's the house?
It's repaired now, dealing with insurance. But I mean, we're good. It's just it's one more kick in the what.
Yes.
It's been not a fun couple months. So, hopefully with Atlanta United coming back 2 weeks from tomorrow, we'll be on the path to better things. And again, fortunately, no one got hurt. The damage was relatively minimal. So now we'll just get to find out who pays for it.
So next week, stoppage time will be on Tuesday. Do you want to hang out with us on Tuesday morning as well?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely do it because I'll be on vacation the rest of the week. I was looking ahead to next week, by the way. The soccer schedule is crazy on TV next week. It's going to be awesome. You're going to have NWSL. You got a lot of Premier League. You've got a lot of Serie A, a lot of La Liga, and meaningful matches in Italy and Spain. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be a lot. I mean, MLS by week after next will be up and running, but from now really until July 8th, every day there's going to be quite a bit to choose from. So it's going to be very, very exciting.
Yeah, lots of stuff for all of us to talk about. So
get
rest up. Enjoy the jambalaya.
Yeah, I'll try, guys. Have a good weekend.
Be good, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. All right, we got a couple of things before we wrap up. Just saw Adrian Wojnarowski said 16 NBA players tested positive out of the first round of testing, 300-plus people tested. That's about what you would expect.
Yeah, that's 16 into 3. It's a little higher than the mean, yeah.
Just a little compared to what we saw out of the first rounds in the Premier League and La Liga.
High teens, high teens in your positives, yeah.
Well, there's more positive people here in this country, so I'm not really surprised by that comparison.
Yep.
And it's plenty of time before they're going to start playing, so that's about what you would expect. You start with all protocols now, that number should go down, and you should go down and be fine. That's where the NBA is with their bubble. MLS with their bubble, like Mike said, you got a couple more teams going in today. NWSL have not heard of any issues with testing out in Utah with all the teams there preparing for games tomorrow. Later today, probably going to go up on the podcast network about 4 or 5 o'clock. We'll have a deep dive into the tournament, myself and Jessica Charman doing your NWSL Challenge Cup preview. So we'll get deeper into each of the teams, who to look for, what players to watch, who could be a surprise, that kind of stuff. That'll be later today, before dinner time. Can promise that much.
And also Southern States SC. We're catching up with them in Hattiesburg, Mississippi out of the NPSL. They are the new kids on the block. We'll have front office and coach for a larger than average 1v1, which we'll post this weekend.
We'll keep an eye on the Eric Lopez rumors and see where that goes. Some reports out of Paraguay said that Olympia would make an announcement today. We'll see if that happens. They are in an interesting financial situation with this Palmeiras case being taken to FIFA about money owed to them. And if that's not paid, that can block you from making other transfers, et cetera, et cetera. So they might want to get this one under the line as quick as possible and pay that debt off and be done with it. So keep that element of it in mind as well, because that factors in. Tafka, thank you for the geography lesson. I was mixing up Dublin and Belfast. Northern Ireland would be part of a UK World Cup, and that would be Belfast, who could host games. You could loop the Republic of Ireland into it potentially if you can deal with the political ramifications of that and have games in Dublin as well. But yeah, it's Northern Ireland and Belfast that would be in a UK World Cup.
Do you see CONCACAF now has to change their World Cup qualifying plan since FIFA has canceled the September international break?
We already knew that. We knew that was coming. We just don't know what it would be, and they don't know what it's going to be yet. They're still trying to figure it out because it's very, very complicated. So stay tuned on what CONCACAF does. You're looking at the windows that will be available to them. It's going to be tough. I mean, the format, the one reason they're changing the format is you had teams that could have gotten into the Hex by increasing their FIFA ranking in games that were not able to be played. So they didn't want to take that away from Canada and Curacao. If they go to 8 teams, those 2 would come in. If they go to 12, you'd have 4 more teams that come in. But then it's less margin for error for the big teams. So U.S., Mexico, Costa Rica are going to fight that. And they have a lot of power in CONCACAF. They don't have all the power, but they have a lot of power in CONCACAF. So I think it's going to end up being 8. At a minimum, if they stick with 6, they're going to have to do something to give Canada and Curacao an opportunity to play their way in.
Yep.
And then they're going to have to schedule it and reschedule the way it's set up because they got to deal with the Nations League semifinals and final from this year as well. They want to do that because those have been sold. That's money they want to spread around CONCACAF. You got Gold Cup qualifiers scheduled for March and June of this year, not happening. So how do you get the 2021 Gold Cup field identified? Are you just going to go by FIFA rankings? You might have to. You might not have a solution here. But then what does that do for a Guadeloupe and a Martinique who are not part of FIFA, who are part of CONCACAF? Don't know. Don't know how you fit that. So that's got to be dealt with. You can't use Gold Cup and World Cup qualifiers as the same because of that and because of who owns these games and rights and fees and sponsorships and all these kinds of things. So it's difficult. It's very, very difficult. No games in CONCACAF, Asia, Africa, Oceania in September. Europe and South America might have games in September, but that's not definite. The June 21 window will have an extra week because you've got, in 21, you've got the Euros, you've got Copa America, you've got the Gold Cup. So are you going to squeeze a World Cup qualifier in there ahead of the Gold Cup? You might. You might have to. The Intercontinental playoffs to determine the final spots, June of 22. Back from March of 22, where it was going to be, which is even further back than it usually would be because the World Cup's going to be deeper in the year. So you're going to know those last teams in June of 2022, and they're going to start playing in November of 22 in the World Cup. They're pushing it back as far as they can. There's really not much more wiggle room. So you've got to fit everything into that cycle, and it's not going to be easy because CONCACAF came up with a really complicated, convoluted system this time around with the 6, but then a separate playoff for everybody else, and then a playoff for the playoff spot, and it's just a lot of games that I don't know how you're going to make it work.
Colonel has a question, and it is it's one that's got a convoluted answer. It's a question about the championship and our Swans.
Okay.
He wants to know is tomorrow the day for the Swans to jump into playoff positions, 7:30 a.m. on Swans TV for £10. So here's how things are in the championship over in England. Outside of West Brom and Leeds, only separated by goal difference. Right now they're at 71 points. They're 7 points ahead of Fulham, who's at 64, Brentford 63, Nottingham Forest at 61. That gets you through 5. That third position for promotion is 3 through 6 in the playoff. Right now, as we speak, leading into the game starting at 2:30 this afternoon Eastern Time, you have 7 teams separated by 3 points from 6th to 12th. Preston, Cardiff at 57, Blackburn and Swansea at 56, Bristol City at 55, Millwall and Derby County at 54. Colonel, to answer your question, going by our friends at Odds Portal, Preston and Cardiff play each other. That might be a point each, so they're looking at a draw. Swansea is one of the few teams that is actually favored to win because they play Luton, who's at the bottom of the table. So Swansea with a win could get closer, but I think that there's going to be some draws. Swansea at minus 143. Blackburn is looking at a draw situation as well. So Derby is at plus 110 against Jessica Charman's Reading, so don't tell Jess about that one. But could be getting kind of close, and the run-in is going to be fun in the championship. If you have ESPN Plus, Preston and Cardiff is at 7:25. Leeds and Fulham is your 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, and the game this afternoon is also on the plus. Brentford and West Brom, which means a lot to Leeds. That one is at 2:40 Eastern Time.
You're not watching to see who wins the title in Germany. Bayern's already got it, but there are some things to watch on the final weekend of the season. Leipzig should be good for the Champions League, although if they lose by like 25 goals, then they're out. So I think we're good there. Mönchengladbach, if they can avoid losing at home to Hertha Berlin, they go into the Champions League next year. Leverkusen's got to beat Mainz and hope for a result. On the other side, about the relegation battle, Werder Bremen, and a lot of people are keeping up with them because of Josh Sargent. Yep. They've got to win at home, ideally by more than 4 goals, and hope Fortuna Dusseldorf does not beat Union Berlin to retain their spot in the top flight. Werder Bremen won the Bundesliga in 2004, and they might get relegated.
Yeah,
you know, I mean that's a long time, but still, it's like a champion getting relegated, a former champion. Doesn't happen very often. Nope. You got Barcelona with a big game at Celta Vigo in Spain this weekend, so you've got a lot of stuff to watch. NWSL tomorrow, CBS, North Carolina, and Portland must watch. You've got FA Cup quarterfinals to watch, but skip the ESPN FA Cup quarterfinal. At that time, it's Manchester United and Norwich. Skip it, watch CBS instead. Or have 2 TVs going, but make sure you got one on CBS.
That one.
That'll be good.
The semifinal draw apparently is going to be at halftime of Manchester City and Newcastle for the FA, and there is a concern that came out in papers about the FA being moved to midweek in the upcoming season because of the TV contract and trying to keep your £800 million Premier League TV contract with weekends and not bumping anything else off of those spots.
You're going to start later. Scotland, there's reports that the way their schedule's going to go, they're going to have to play 33 games in 34 weeks, but that's not counting in international breaks or cup or anything like that. So there's talk that they might have sequences where you play 4 games in 8 days, which is insane. Yeah. It's Scotland, so it's to be expected.
Today.
Yeah. One update on Scotland. Our friends Dundee FC, the ones who held everything up. Why'd you get that? Why'd you go that look on Dundee?
Well, just because of our conversation, I didn't know if you were going to follow it with the word united, considering what we talked about yesterday.
No, our friends at Dundee who put their vote up for bid. Their season tickets have gone on sale, and they've sold about 10% of what they usually sell right now.
There you go.
That's not good. No. But they haven't really made people happy either with the way they handled things. All right, cleaning up Twitch and the comments there. Johannes, who I'm sure has a very neutral point of view on this, says Jurgen Klopp's next move hopefully will be the German national team, but probably not for another 5+ years. Isn't his contract coming up at Liverpool? And that was
recently renewed it.
They recently renewed it. Okay, so there was, I know, at least some initial discussion, like, oh, he might not be happy, he might walk, blah 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 blah.
I don't. A couple of years.
I don't see it happening.
Yeah.
5 years, yeah, that's reasonable. Bernd Dursberger talks about the TV money in the EPL versus the Bundesliga. It's like $1 billion difference. Yeah, that would definitely explain the difference in quality. And that's what it is. It's okay. Some comments about Earthlink from Joe Johnstone.
Yes.
When we were talking about Prodigy and stuff.
Very nice.
I don't think Earthlink was around in 90. I think that was more like later. 2000. Mindspring was what I was dealing with before Earthlink. So maybe Earthlink was. I don't know. Bartimus talking about the World Cup possibilities. He says maybe the best idea for a multi-country bid would be that UK plus the Republic of Ireland idea. Another one would be Spain and Portugal. I'm with Bart. He says Australia and New Zealand could host a men's World Cup, but you'd have to maybe move and include Australian rules football stadiums as well, which you're going to be further away from the field because they're these giant ovals. So maybe not. You might be able to find some ways to work around that and make it work. Atlanta Phoenix on Rapinoe, on press, on Heath about playing in the Challenge Cup. I understand players' choices to not play, but at the same time, I cannot take off from work in this pandemic. I have high-risk relatives, and my work has horrendous protocols that are nowhere near what NWSL has in place to protect the players. None of my managers wear masks, social distancing is ignored, but I still have to work. I would welcome a chance to play soccer and get paid for it in a safe manner.
or not play soccer and get paid.
Yeah, and that does add to it. I don't think these are greedy players by any stretch. I'm just really weird by the messaging of all of it and the way it's been handled. So we'll see. Chris Ashley is hoping for your Swansea boys to do okay. Also hoping for Leeds. Sorry, not your Swansea boys. Doesn't care.
Leeds,
about your Swansea boys.
Leeds and West Brom are 1-2, and they're 7 points clear. So, he's a Bielsa guy anyway. So no, I get that completely.
Yeah. And an Ian Harks fan who is over at Dundee United. I mentioned Dundee and you got excited about United, well, he's going to be in the Scottish Premiership next year. No other updates on our friend Eric Lopez out of Paraguay. I'm looking to see if anything else has come across here at the last minute. I mean, it's the usual stuff that is bouncing right now. Diego Rolón Cantero, who is involved with Tigo Sports, said that the negotiations are very advanced for Eric Lopez to be transferred to Atlanta United. That's on Tigo Sports PY. They have the Paraguayan league rights to broadcast the games, so they are pretty well locked in. It's moving along, and I think that is actually on Tigo Sports right now. Diego Rolón Cantero is talking about this move and says that they are very advanced. We'll see. It looks like he's outside at Olympia right now, so we'll see. Wearing a mask and has the microphone with a cover over it, over the cover of the cover.
Over the windscreen, yeah.
Yes, over the windscreen. So very, very good from our friend Diego Rolón Cantero.
Later today, sometime between noon and 2, keep an eye out for the USL Championship because we get the group stage for the East. The West was named yesterday, so we'll get a look at what the group stage looks like for the USL Championship. Earthlink was founded in 1994.
It was later. I did have a question come across. I want to say it was Atlanta Phoenix. Don't yell at me too loudly if I messed up who asked it at the beginning of the show. Group of death out of the Western Conference groups. I would go Group C because you've got Real Monarchs, you've got New Mexico, you've got El Paso, and Colorado Springs in it. That's the one that I'll go as the group of death.
Yeah, because
you got the defending champs. You got New Mexico is going to be difficult. El Paso's good, and Colorado Springs has been getting better and better. So yeah, I'm going to go that one.
Yeah, because D, you've got Austin, OKC, RGV, San Antonio, and Tulsa. Group B is San Diego, Los Dos, Orange County, Vegas, and Phoenix. And then the Pacific Northwest group, adding in Reno and Sacramento as your Group A, so I'll go C by default.
Yeah, it should be Sacramento and A. It should be Phoenix and B. D's a little bit of a wild card, but I think C is a better challenge. So that's my group of death. We'll see how they get divided up in the Eastern Conference. We'll see if Atlanta United 2, I think they'll be with the Florida teams, but will they be with Charlotte and Charleston, or will they be with Birmingham and Memphis? Just depends on how you want to slice it up. I think they'll be in a 5-team group, though.
Yeah, I think so, because it's going to be
you got to have the Florida teams with Atlanta, and then you've got to have those other two together.
Yeah. So, that's trying to just figure out where it is. So I think we know 3 of the 5. We'll just figure out the other 2 when return to play graphics pop up on the USL Championship social media channels at USL Championship on Twitter.
Yeah, and just keep an eye on all your favorite usual suspects who will be covering the Eric Lopez possibility. Just to remind you, this is a player who's got 16 professional games under their belt. It's a player who's got 3 appearances for, maybe a couple more because I think he played in some friendlies. 3 to 5 appearances for youth national teams with Paraguay. A guy who broke into the first team last July. He's young. He's 18. Don't let the expectations get completely out of whack for him. He is a promising young player. He is a player who is getting a good bit of attention domestically in Paraguay. He's a player who would not be expected to come in and score 30 goals. That's not a fair expectation for Eric Lopez. He would be a player who would be an understudy to Joseph Martinez and fill in a role right now, but he's going to have to compete with one seasoned veteran in Adam John, one young player who provides very different things in J.J. Williams, and the possibility of using a false 9 with a player like a Pity Martinez. He wouldn't come in and be expected to start and play every minute. That's not a fair expectation. 16 professional matches under his belt, along with some youth national team appearances for Paraguay. It is a move for the future. It is a good investment if it happens for the prices that we're hearing, and we'll see. With that U22 initiative, these are the kinds of moves you're going to see. It's going to raise the overall level of the group, even if he doesn't come in and start every game straight away. I don't think that's a fair expectation for Eric Lopez. So we will see if it goes down. Tigo Sports in Paraguay will be covering it. ABC in Paraguay will be covering it. Bruno Pont, who's on Paraguayan radio, will be covering it. We'll keep you posted. We're going to talk some NWSL later today. Busy day, busy weekend. It'll be a busy Monday to recap everything. Thanks for hanging out with us. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.